to Studioloo. I'm Cindy, and I am bringing you another of my gnome journals. I'm going to be wrapping up this series today and finishing out the videos of the gnome journals. Today I am accompanied by one of my older gnome home carvings that I used to do. They were made from birch tree, and I would carve them into little gnome homes, and on top felted wool and a little toadstool that's been sewn and beaded and felted with some wool locks. And so that's something that I used to do quite some time ago, and yeah, it's a fun project that I used to teach workshops in. Anyhow, but I will hop into this journal. This one has been made in a vintage book, The Collected Verse of Edgar, a Guest. He was a poet, and some of his poems are quite lovely, but this book was in quite disrepair, so I had to restore it, which is exactly what I've done. And the whole thing has been sealed. I did use the spine label from the original Gnomes book as the label on the cover of this book, and you can see the whole thing has this beautiful gold embossing. And so I've also tied a little toadstool bead to the signature here for fun. The book has 3 signatures. There are some fabric elements to it. So we'll just make sure that we're well in frame, and I will get into the journal. So with this journal, I was actually able to pay a little bit of homage to the book and use some of the book pages for ephemera in the book. This one is the main book plate, and it does have a guest poem on it, which I'll read to you. I'd like to think when life is done that I had filled a needed post, that here and there I'd paid my fare with more than idle talk and boast, that I had taken gifts divine, the breath of life and manhood fine, and tried to use them now and then in service for my fellow men. So that's kind of lovely. And I added this gnome carrying a basket of what looks like pine cones. Inside is the note from the bookmaker and a collage tag from a vintage copy of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And so they just both pop in here. You'll be able to see that I have bound this book with, again, my eco-dyed silk and a hidden spine. It starts with a page of eco-printed paper, which I've made. I won't bear saying it every time, but every page, every piece of artwork in these books is made or collaged by me. I don't use the work of others in my books. I do all of my own work. This is a duck from a vintage book. And there's fabric elements where I've sewn fabric down the sides of the pages. This is a magazine page with some beautiful drying florals. These are hand-dyed papers with cabbage and Easter egg dye. And it talks about different seeds. And inside is this journal tag that has a little gnome trying to go to bed, and he's talking to a little bumblebee. And on back is this toadstool. And here we have a magazine page of handling birds, and this vulture from a vintage bird book. And on this side is showing the whole root ball system of a bulb with flowers, and some coffee dyed paper, and a pine cone, and a toadstool. And just some blue paper, some botanicals. This is a coloring book page from the story of Pandora. It has lots of beautiful botanicals and mushroom imagery. And an owl. We're at the center of the first signature. And on this side, we have the dandelion parachute is beautifully designed to carry fruit away on the lightest breeze. See how far you can blow the fruits with a single puff. More botanicals and coffee dyed paper, and then a hawk, and just some thistles and more botanicals, more bird handling imagery. And on this side we have a belly band that has a gnome doing some what looks like butter churning maybe. And inside is a journal card with a couple of gnomes. They're talking about, you know, something relating to building a house because it looks like what they're doing. And then some botanical on the back. And cabbage dyed paper, Easter egg dyed paper. And on this side is another belly band with another gnome with sort of a wagon of flowers. And inside is a journal card with these lovely butterflies from a vintage insect field guide. And then just some botanical images. And another duck. And more of my botanical paper. And then we are at the center of the first two signatures. So this is eco-printed paper on both sides. And then inside I just put this little bonus. It's sort of a little collaged folder. And it's been joined with fabric. And there's on this side, this is eco-printed and dyed papers, matte paper, and a little New Zealand stamp of a bird. And on this side is more of sort of the same dyed papers and a little Karaka stamp from New Zealand. Lots of birds. And then the inside, so you'll see these are two actually security envelopes, so you can see the vellum here behind the collaging. And inside, both sides, there's another collaged journal tag. This one has a gnome with a broom, and there's birds flying all around it. So that just tucks right in like that. And these have been sewn around, each of them. And inside is a journal card on this side that's been collaged with a little gnome in a garden. Coffee dyed on the back. And again, it just slides on the top here. There we go. So yeah, that's just a little flip out, fold out. And it's just a little bonus in the journal. Coffee dyed paper. This is original book page from a gnome book. I haven't mentioned it in this video, but if you haven't seen the journal video number 1, the gnome tome, I recommend you take a look at it because it talks about where I got all of the materials to make these journals, all of the gnome imageries. Some green paper and a swan. And just some lovely hydrangea and dragonfly scrapbook paper, graph paper, and this is more of the story of Pandora, a coloring book page. More cabbage dyed and avocado dyed papers, and some beautiful mushroom photography. Lots of beautiful mushrooms. More dyed paper and some mushroom stamping. And more of Pandora. And then just some botanical images, more of the scrapbook paper. And another swan. Coffee dyed paper. Original book page from the gnome book, just landscape. And then we have a gnome standing in the horizon here. Eco-printed paper. And now we are at the center of the last two signatures. And there's this large envelope that I made from an original book page from the gnome book. Just a gnome with all sorts of birds that he's feeding. And then you open up this envelope, and inside we have this lovely little image of sort of a farm with this really fun little mushroom head person standing there, and it has a description of a garden gnome. The garden gnome belongs to the general type. He lives in old gardens, even those hemmed in between new houses of modern model cities. His nature is on the somber side, and he rather enjoys telling melancholy tales. If he begins to feel too closed in, he simply goes to the woods, but as he is quite learned, he sometimes feels out of place there. That's just a lovely old paper that was a book plate in an old book. And that just tucks in the center. And then more of my eco-printed paper. And then some insect paper. And this is an illustration of a log, sort of the crosshatch of a tree. And then a magazine page of just beautiful florals and figs. Some green scrapbook paper. And this little gnome with a little bird friend. And this is avocado dyed large format encyclopedia paper. It's sort of a illustration of a bird. And then just some book page. And on this side we have a belly band that is from a chapter of the original vintage gnome book called Twilight and Night Beams. And inside is a journal card with an owl in the dark. And on the back is this little gold and black moon. And that just tucks in there. And a magazine page with photography of peas and flowers. Coffee dyed paper. There's more of the story of Pandora, the coloring book page. Beautiful illustrations. More coffee dyed paper. And then we have a side tuck with a hawk there and this large journal tag that has been collaged and has a gnome on front. And it just tucks right in here. More of the magazine paper with peas. And then on this side we have an envelope that's been made from a vintage book page with a raccoon. And inside is a journal card on book paper with this lovely bird. It's just been collaged on both sides. And that just tucks in there. There we go. On this side we have a pocket that's been all sewn with this gnome riding on the back of a bird, and inside a winter scene of a gnome building a snow gnome on a journal tag. This side we have an illustration of a pine cone, more figs and green paper, and a moth and some more botanical, more insects and eco-printed paper. And on the back is a large pocket of a gnome walking with a little bug here and a bunny. And inside are a couple of things. So let me just tug them out here. So this is a journal card with a gnome with his foot. Looks like his foot is stuck in a wood pile. And on back is a hummingbird drinking from a flower. Then a large journal tag of a gnome skating in the moonlight. And on the back another flower. And both of those just tuck on in here. And then we reach the back of the book. Thank you so much for watching. These journals will be in my Etsy shop shortly after, or even possibly by the time these videos are posted. So all of my information, including my shop link, is in the description box. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, click on the little bell to be notified when I make new videos. Have a great day.